Oh, yes, and the answer I have here, I see it in 250, what I've written, it says, to say, what you say is, to say that racism will not end is to say that non-white people will always be subject to it. That's the logical thing to say. If you're going to say that racism is never going to end, then you just say that, well, if it's not going to end, the correct thing to say is that non-white people will always be subject to racism. And to say that non-white people will always be subject to it is to say that what needs to be done cannot be done. Now, you can say that, but then I have a note here that says what needs to be done is to establish and maintain justice. So I have told people sometimes when they say in discussions that people feel uncomfortable about talking about racism, or they're just tired of talking about it.
Yes.
And this is understandable. And that's correct. So people have asked me, so what do you do when people say they don't want to talk about racism, or they're tired of talking about it? Or you might be around some white people who, everything is going south, as you might say, when the discussion starts about race. And you're in the company of white people talking about it. Well, what you do in a compensatory way, you do what works best. You talk about the production of justice, which most people at least feel comfortable enough talking about it up to a point.
Up to a point.
At least.
Yes.
But you start off by saying, okay, we're not going to talk about anything except producing a product called justice. How about that? Is everybody on board with that? Because if you're going to talk to people, usually the best way to go about talking to people is talk about something that they don't mind talking about. And most people don't mind talking about justice.
Okay.
Because most people will say that they believe in justice. So that's what you do. You just don't talk about racism.
Okay.
You talk about producing justice. So then you start off by doing what? Since you're talking about justice, you define, and I suggest you use a compensatory definition, justice is guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated. That's number one. And number two, guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help.
Yes, sir.
And this works real good, particularly since we're in the area of politics, that it spills over into the area of labor. That applies on the job for sure.
Yes, sir.
Talk about justice on the job. Don't talk about racism. That stirs up, more problems than they want. You don't want to make more problems.
Yes, sir.
All right? Talk about justice. So when you get everybody on board saying, yeah, they're all for justice, then you define what it is, and it'll take you right where you need to go in that discussion.
Okay.
Because what is it? It's guaranteeing that nobody's mistreated. Now, racism is all about mistreatment. So when you're talking about producing justice, you're talking about ending racism automatically. But you're not mentioning racism. See how that works?
Yes.
That's the logical process.
Okay.
And you're getting better results.
Okay.
And you're also talking about helping the person that needs help the most. And on most jobs, who needs help the most? Person of color.